Jack Harris, a man of fortune and influence, stood frozen at the edge of a cobblestone path in the heart of Chicago. It was a typical late afternoon, the sun casting long shadows across the park. But something had caught his eye, something he hadn't expected to see. His gaze fixed on a small figure sitting on the grass beneath a towering oak tree. A little girl, no older than 7, was teaching his son, Max, how to solve a math problem. Jack's initial shock wasn't just at the sight of a child teaching his son in the middle of the park, it was the way she was teaching. There, on the ground, Max, his 6-year-old boy in a pricey uniform, was completely absorbed in the lesson. The grass stains on his pants, once a symbol of carefree play, seemed to fade in comparison to the intensity of his focus. The girl, sitting cross-legged beside him, was holding a battered notebook, its pages worn and filled with scribbled equations and drawings. Jack couldn't help but notice how she held her pencil, a stub, barely an inch long, yet she wrote with a precision that seemed almost unnatural for someone so young. "See, Max, when you add the numbers, you carry the 1 here," the girl explained, her voice calm and patient, a hint of wisdom in her words. "Now, you make a pile of 10 and start a new pile for the next number," she added, her voice as steady as a seasoned tutor's. Max's face lit up with understanding. The frustration he had shown earlier in their tutoring sessions was nowhere to be seen now. "It's like building blocks," he exclaimed. Jack stood in silence, watching the exchange. His heart tightened in his chest as he reflected on the struggle Max had endured. Despite the expensive tutors he had hired, Max still struggled with schoolwork. He had been rejected, frustrated, and convinced that he was stupid by the very school that was supposed to nurture him. Yet here he was, finally understanding math, taught by a homeless girl in a park. The girl, who had a single missing front tooth, smiled brightly at Max. "You're really smart, Max. You just needed someone to explain it differently," she said, her voice filled with a strange mixture of maturity and innocence. Jack, unable to hold back any longer, took a few steps closer. The girl looked up at him, her expression unreadable. There was no fear in her eyes, only a quiet dignity that made Jack feel as if he were the one out of place. "Who are you?" he asked softly, kneeling down so that he was eye level with her. "I'm Lily," she said, her eyes steady on his. "I help Max because he learns in a different way. I taught him how to count, but we also talk about other things. I like learning a lot. Numbers are like magic. They explain everything." Jack was taken aback by her response. She wasn't just a child, she was wise, beyond her years. "What do you mean, Lily? Where did you learn all of this?" Jack asked, his curiosity piqued. "I read books I find," she said, almost nonchalantly. "Sometimes people leave them in the trash, and I pick them up. There's a library nearby, too. I learn everything I can. I don't need a school to learn. I learn from life." Jack felt a pang in his chest. This child, so much younger than Max, had an understanding of the world that many adults would never reach. She had no proper education, no teacher guiding her, yet she seemed to grasp the most important lessons in life. The contrast between her world and Max's was so stark that it made Jack question everything he thought he knew about success and education. "Lily," Jack began, his voice softer now, "where are your parents?" At the mention of her parents, Lily's demeanor shifted slightly. Her chin tightened, her eyes darkening. "I take care of myself, sir," she said quietly, almost as if she were ashamed of it. But there was no self-pity in her voice, just a quiet strength that spoke volumes. Jack's heart sank. He looked around, suddenly aware of the shopping cart hidden behind the tree, filled with personal belongings and worn books. The reality of her situation hit him. This little girl was homeless, yet she had managed to stay resilient and independent. Max, unaware of the gravity of the conversation, tugged at Jack's sleeve. "Dad, Lily is really smart. She taught me all these things. Can she come home with us?" Jack looked at Lily, who had started to pack up her things. Her expression was still composed, but there was a trace of vulnerability in her eyes. "Can you come home with us, Lily?" Jack repeated, this time more gently. Lily looked up at him, her face unreadable. "I don't want to be a burden," she said simply. "I'm fine here. I don't need anything from you." Jack was quiet for a moment. He understood the unspoken words in her response. She didn't trust that someone like him would offer help without strings attached. But he couldn't ignore the connection he had just witnessed between her and Max. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was something extraordinary about this girl. "Lily," Jack began, his voice steady, "I don't want to just help you because you're in need. I want to help you because you've helped my son. You've done something no expensive tutor has been able to do. You've shown him the joy of learning." Lily hesitated. Her eyes flicked to the ground, then back up to Jack. There was a long silence before she spoke again. "I don't know if I can accept that kind of help," she said quietly. "But, if you really want to help me, there's one thing I'll accept. Jack leaned in, eager to hear what she had to say. "What is it?" he asked. Lily's gaze softened slightly. "I want to keep teaching Max. I want him to learn, and I want to be the one to show him how. If you're serious about helping me, then let me keep teaching him. Let me do that." Jack's heart swelled. "You've got yourself a deal, Lily," he said with a smile. And just like that, an unspoken promise was made. Jack's life was about to change in ways he couldn't yet imagine. As they walked away, with Max skipping beside him and Lily following at a quiet pace, Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. There was something about this girl, something raw and unfiltered, that made him believe in the impossible. He didn't know it yet, but Lily's presence in his life would challenge everything he thought he knew about family, success, and the pursuit of happiness. Jack didn't realize it at the time, but that small encounter in the park would set into motion a series of events that would change their lives forever. The following afternoon, Jack found himself waiting outside the park again, but this time he wasn't just watching from a distance. He was here to meet Lily, and as he stood by the oak tree, a strange sense of anticipation filled him. Max was by his side, practically bouncing with excitement, eagerly awaiting Lily's arrival. "She's coming, right, Dad?" Max asked for the third time in as many minutes. Jack smiled at his son's infectious energy, but his mind was filled with uncertainty. He had made an offer to Lily, but would she accept? Could she really trust him? The sounds of children playing, the distant chatter of parkgoers, and the rustle of leaves above them were all background noise to Jack's thoughts. He glanced at his watch. It was nearly the same time they had met yesterday, but Lily was still nowhere in sight. "Maybe she doesn't want to come," Jack said to himself more than to Max. "She might be scared, or maybe she just doesn't trust me." Max looked up at his father, furrowing his brow in concern. "But she liked helping me. She said we could learn together. She's going to come, I know it." Jack nodded, trying to reassure himself as much as Max. Just as he was about to say something comforting, a figure appeared at the edge of the park, stepping slowly toward them. Jack's heart skipped a beat. It was Lily, carrying her battered notebook under one arm and her small backpack slung over her shoulder. Max jumped up from the bench, running toward her. "Lily! You came. I knew you would." Lily's face softened into a small smile as she looked at Max. She gave him a brief nod but didn't speak immediately. Instead, she turned to Jack, her eyes cautious, studying him for a moment. Jack stood, his hands in his pockets, waiting for her to speak. "I've been thinking about your offer," she said, her voice steady but still guarded. "And I've decided? I'll try. But only because I want to help Max. I don't need anything from you, just to teach him." Jack's face lit up with relief. He had known this wouldn't be easy, but hearing her say it out loud meant more than he could express. "Thank you, Lily. You don't know how much this means to both of us," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. "You're not just teaching Max, you're giving him something more than I ever could." Lily glanced at the ground, her face unreadable for a moment before she looked up at him. "I know what it's like to have nothing," she said quietly. "I'm not going to make this about me. I just want Max to learn, to feel what it's like to understand. To not feel lost anymore." Jack watched as she spoke, the weight of her words sinking in. This wasn't just about tutoring, it was about something deeper. Lily was offering Max something that even the best tutors hadn't been able to give him, a sense of connection, a way of understanding that was beyond textbooks or conventional teaching. "Then we're going to make sure this works," Jack said, the words coming more easily than he expected. "Starting today, let's make this real. We'll figure out a schedule, and you can start helping Max after school. And, Lily, if you ever need anything, you come to me. I mean it." Lily looked at him for a long time, her expression softening, but there was still a flicker of caution in her eyes. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she glanced at Max, who was bouncing on his heels, waiting impatiently for her to start teaching again. Jack followed her gaze and realized just how much this small girl had already changed their lives. In the span of a single afternoon, she had managed to not only help Max grasp something he had struggled with for months but also taught him the joy of learning. She had done in moments what Jack's expensive tutors had failed to do in weeks. "Okay," Lily said, her voice steady but with a hint of determination. "Let's do this. Where are we starting?" Max grinned from ear to ear. "Math. I want to learn more about numbers and how they work together." Lily nodded, flipping open her worn notebook and pulling out a pencil. She started writing numbers on the page, her fingers delicate but precise. Jack watched in silence as she began to explain in her own unique way. There was no rush in her teaching, no pressure, just a quiet, unwavering patience that made learning feel like a natural process rather than a forced task. It was clear that Lily had a gift for teaching, and in that moment, Jack realized how much they could learn from each other. For the next few hours, Lily and Max worked together, with Jack observing from a distance. It wasn't just the math that was changing, something in the air had shifted. Max's laughter echoed through the park, his questions and curiosity growing with every lesson Lily taught him. For the first time in a long while, Jack felt a sense of hope that things might finally be falling into place for his son. As the sun began to set and the park started to empty, Jack approached Lily again, his thoughts racing. He had been watching Max and Lily, both so absorbed in their work, and he realized just how lucky they were to have met her. "Lily," he began, his voice softer now, this is just the beginning. We're going to make sure you get everything you need, too. You're not alone in this anymore. You've got a family now." Lily looked at him, her face still guarded but with a small, almost imperceptible smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "I'm just here to help," she said simply. "And I'm glad Max is learning." Jack nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He knew that offering her help was the right thing to do, but something told him that Lily was already teaching him more than he could ever have imagined. She wasn't just showing Max how to learn, she was teaching Jack how to be a better person, how to see the world with new eyes. As they walked back toward the car, Max holding Lily's hand as they talked excitedly about the next lesson, Jack felt a strange warmth spreading through him. For the first time in what felt like years, he didn't feel like he was just going through the motions of life. Something real, something meaningful, was beginning to take shape. The next few days passed in a blur of math lessons, creative problem-solving, and moments of laughter that Jack hadn't realized he had been missing. Lily showed up every afternoon without fail, her battered notebooks always in hand, ready to teach Max in a way that felt natural and effortless. Jack, who had grown used to the sterile efficiency of professional tutors, found himself in awe of Lily's ability to connect with Max. She didn't follow any structured curriculum or textbook. Instead, she made learning feel like an adventure, turning every lesson into a story, every problem into a challenge. The math they worked on one day would become a puzzle to solve the next, and before long, Max was asking questions that Jack hadn't even thought to ask. "Dad, did you know that 3 plus 5 is just like adding 2 groups of 4? Max asked one evening, his face alight with excitement. Jack paused, raising an eyebrow. "Really? How?" "Well," Max began, his hands moving excitedly as he explained, "when you add 3 plus 5, it's like splitting 5 into a 4 and a 1, so it's like 4 plus 4, which we already know is 8. See? It's like a trick." Jack chuckled softly, marveling at his son's enthusiasm. "That's clever, Max. It looks like Lily has taught you some pretty cool tricks." Max grinned, his pride evident. "Lily says math is like magic. It helps explain everything." Jack glanced over at Lily, who was sitting quietly at the table, her small fingers lightly tapping the edge of her notebook. She had taught Max not just the answers, but the joy of figuring things out on his own. And she had done so with such a quiet confidence that Jack felt it too, the growing realization that they were both learning from her in ways he hadn't expected. That evening, as Jack was preparing dinner, he found himself reflecting on how much Lily had already changed their lives. Max's newfound love for learning was undeniable, but it wasn't just about the lessons. It was the way Max approached challenges now, with a sense of excitement and possibility. It was the way he looked at the world around him, curious and eager to discover how things worked. "Jack, are you okay?" Lily's voice cut through his thoughts. He turned to find her standing in the doorway of the kitchen, watching him carefully. "Yeah, just thinking," Jack replied, smiling as he set down the knife he had been holding. "You've really changed things around here, you know." Lily's expression softened, but she didn't reply immediately. Instead, she just nodded, her eyes a little distant. "I'm glad," she said after a moment. "Max is really smart. He just needed someone to show him how to see things differently. And, I'm glad I could help." Jack turned to face her, his expression serious now. "Lily, you've done more than just help. You've made a difference, more than I ever could have imagined. I don't know how to thank you for that." She hesitated, then looked up at him. "You don't have to. I'm just here to teach. But, sometimes it's nice to feel like I'm part of something, you know? Like I matter." Jack's heart tightened at her words. "You matter, Lily," he said quietly. "You matter more than you know." There was a long silence between them. Jack could see the weight of her past in her eyes, those silent battles she fought, the resilience that had gotten her this far despite everything life had thrown her way. And yet, here she was, offering her gift to them, teaching not just math, but the value of persistence, of never giving up on learning, no matter the odds. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door, pulling Jack out of his thoughts. He looked toward the door, then back at Lily. "Expecting anyone?" Lily shook her head, her brow furrowing slightly. "No. Maybe it's just a delivery or something." Jack walked over to the door and opened it cautiously. Standing there, in a well-worn jacket and a grim expression, was a man Jack didn't recognize. Mr. Harris? The man asked, his voice low but firm. Yes? Jack replied, taking a step back. I'm Officer Danny Thompson. I'm with the local precinct. Is Lily Hayes here? Jack's blood ran cold. Lily's name was spoken so casually, as if it were nothing. But in that moment, he understood, Lily's past was not as far behind her as she had hoped. Lily, who had been standing quietly by the table, froze at the sound of her name. Her entire body went tense. Jack looked at her, then back at the officer, the realization dawning on him that he had no idea what kind of trouble Lily might still be facing. Is there a problem? Jack asked cautiously, his eyes never leaving Lily's tense figure. She's a minor. We're just here to check in on her. There have been reports of a missing child, and we need to make sure she's safe, Officer Thompson said, glancing over at Lily, who was now nervously shifting from one foot to the other. Jack felt his chest tighten. He turned to Lily, his voice softer now. Lily, are you okay? Lily swallowed hard, her eyes darting from Jack to the officer and back again. She nodded, but it was barely perceptible. I'm fine. They're just doing their job, she said quietly, her voice barely a whisper. Jack knew something was wrong. He could see it in the way she held herself, the way she shrank back from the officer's gaze. Lily, he said, his voice low but firm, you don't have to do this alone. You've already trusted me, and I'm not going to let anything happen to you. Not now, not ever. Officer Thompson seemed to sense the tension in the room, his eyes flicking back and forth between Jack and Lily. We just need to confirm a few details, Mr. Harris. It's protocol, he explained, though there was no mistaking the undercurrent of authority in his tone. Jack stood his ground, his protective instincts rising. I understand, but she's under my care now. If you need anything, you can speak to my lawyer. But Lily is staying here. She's safe. There was a moment of silence as the officer studied him, then finally gave a small nod. I understand, Mr. Harris. We'll be in touch. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Jack and Lily standing in the doorway, the weight of the encounter lingering between them. Lily exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Jack stepped aside, letting her into the house. He didn't say anything at first, just gave her space to breathe. Finally, after a long moment, Jack spoke. You don't have to tell me everything, Lily, he said softly. But if there's something I can do to help, you have to let me know. Lily turned to face him, her eyes filled with a quiet gratitude. I will, she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. I'm not used to people caring. But thank you. For everything. Jack nodded, a sense of determination building in his chest. This wasn't just about tutoring anymore. It was about something much bigger, about protecting Lily, giving her a chance to truly have a future. As the night settled in, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something far more complex than he had ever imagined. The days that followed were a delicate balance of normalcy and underlying tension. Jack could sense that something had shifted in Lily ever since the visit from Officer Thompson. She had grown more distant, her usually composed demeanor now tinted with a trace of anxiety. Her eyes, once filled with an eager spark whenever she taught Max, now seemed to carry a weight, an invisible burden she couldn't quite shake. Max, oblivious to the complexities surrounding him, continued his lessons with Lily, learning quickly and happily. But Jack couldn't ignore the growing sense of unease that clung to the air. Lily was keeping something from him, something that seemed tied to her past, and he knew that eventually, he would have to confront it. That evening, as the sun began to set and the soft glow of the living room lights illuminated the room, Jack found Lily sitting alone by the window, staring out at the city skyline. She hadn't touched her dinner, and Jack could tell that her mind was elsewhere. Hey, you okay? Jack asked softly, leaning against the doorframe. Lily didn't respond immediately. Instead, she turned her head slightly, just enough for Jack to see her profile. The lines of tension were evident on her face. She was trying to hide something, but Jack knew her well enough by now to understand that whatever it was eating her up inside. I don't like what happened today, she said quietly, her voice trembling just slightly. The officer, he's part of something I can't escape. Jack's heart sank. He took a few steps toward her, his presence a silent invitation to speak. Lily, whatever it is, we can face it together. You don't have to carry this alone. Lily finally turned to him, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and resignation. She took a deep breath before speaking, as though summoning the courage to reveal a truth she had buried deep inside. You don't know who I am, Jack. Not really, she whispered. I didn't just run away from foster care. I ran because I couldn't survive there anymore. The people who were supposed to take care of me, my uncle, the foster families, they were all dangerous in their own ways. Jack's chest tightened as he listened, his mind racing. He had suspected that Lily's past was more complicated than she had let on, but hearing it from her directly sent a chill through him. "What do you mean, dangerous?" Jack asked, his voice low, filled with concern. Lily's gaze dropped to her hands, fidgeting with the edge of her sleeve. "My uncle, Thomas, he didn't want me. He took me in only because the state paid him for fostering me. He thought of me as a paycheck, not a person. When I started asking questions about my mom, about where she had gone, he got angry. He wasn't the man I thought he was. He had debts, gambling debts, and I was just a burden to him." Jack clenched his jaw, his mind reeling at the thought of the man who had done this to Lily. "And the foster families?" he pressed, his voice tightening with anger. Lily hesitated, her eyes filled with a mixture of pain and fear. "The first family, they didn't care. They only wanted the state check. They neglected me, treated me like a chore. The second family, they already had too many kids. I was just another mouth to feed. And the third, that's when it all got bad." Jack's heart dropped. What happened? Lily's voice faltered as she spoke, the memories clearly painful to relive. The third family, the father, Gerald Morrison. He was a drunk. He started breaking things when he got angry. At first, it was just objects, furniture, windows, but then he started breaking people. Me. Jack felt a sharp pang of anger rise in his chest. "What do you mean by breaking people?" he asked, struggling to keep his composure. Lily's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "He hit me. He started with slaps, then punches. But the worst part was how he made me feel. Like I wasn't worth anything, like I was just there to be punished for something I hadn't even done." She swallowed hard, the pain still fresh in her voice. "I tried to tell someone, but they didn't believe me. And then, one night, I ran. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay there." Jack was speechless, his mind grappling with the horror of what Lily had gone through. He felt an overwhelming sense of protectiveness toward her, the desire to shield her from any more pain flooding through him. "Lily, you shouldn't have had to go through that. No one should." Lily's face crumpled slightly, her carefully built walls beginning to crumble. "I didn't know who else to turn to, Jack. I didn't know who would care. So I kept running, hoping that maybe, just maybe, I'd find a place where I could be safe." Jack moved closer to her, his hand reaching out to gently rest on her shoulder. "You're safe now, Lily. You don't have to keep running anymore." She looked up at him, her expression softening but still filled with doubt. "But what about them? What about my uncle and the foster homes? What if they find me? What if I'm never truly free from them?" Jack's heart broke for the girl who had fought so hard to survive, who had never had a chance to simply be a child. "You're not alone, Lily. You don't have to worry about them anymore. I'm not going to let anyone take you from us. You have a family now, a real one. And we'll fight to make sure you stay safe. I promise." For a moment, Lily just stared at him, as if searching for any sign that he truly meant it. Then, slowly, she nodded, a fragile smile forming on her lips. "Thank you," she whispered. Jack gave her a soft, reassuring smile. "You don't have to thank me. We're in this together, Lily. Always." As the evening wore on, Jack couldn't shake the weight of Lily's words. The darkness of her past was far from over, but one thing was certain, he would protect her with everything he had. He had made a promise to her, and this time, he wasn't going to break it. The days after Lily's revelation were filled with an uneasy quiet. Jack had made a vow to protect her, but that promise came with its own set of challenges. The looming shadow of her past was never far, especially with the visit from Officer Thompson still fresh in his mind. Jack knew it was only a matter of time before the authorities would intervene again, and when they did, he wanted to be prepared. One afternoon, Jack sat in his office, the weight of his phone call with his lawyer lingering in his mind. The papers for legal guardianship were moving slowly, and there was a constant worry about the potential complications. It wasn't just Lily's past that had to be protected, it was also the fragile piece they had found together as a family. Jack knew that the system could tear it all apart if they weren't careful. His thoughts were interrupted when Max burst into the room, his face lit up with excitement. "Dad! You won't believe what Lily taught me today," Max exclaimed, bouncing on his heels. Jack smiled, his heart swelling with pride. He had seen a change in Max over the past week, a change that had everything to do with Lily. "What did she teach you, buddy?" he asked, motioning for Max to come sit beside him. Max took a seat, still grinning ear to ear. "We built a rocket today. She showed me how to make one with some paper and stuff we found around the house. And she said we could make it fly with a balloon. It's like science, Dad. Like real science." Max was nearly vibrating with excitement. Jack chuckled, imagining Lily's unconventional approach to teaching. He had never seen Max this excited about learning before. "That sounds amazing," he said, trying to hide the mixture of worry and admiration he felt. Lily was a brilliant teacher, no doubt about it, but Jack knew that their future together wasn't going to be easy. The threats from her past were still very much a reality. Later that evening, after dinner, Jack sat down with Lily in the living room. He had been giving her space to process everything, but now he needed to address the growing concern in his mind. As much as he wanted to let her continue teaching Max, he also needed to protect her from the forces that seemed determined to drag her back into the system. Lily, Jack began, his tone serious but kind, I've been thinking about what's coming next. About the court hearings and the people who might try to take you away. Lily's eyes flickered, but she remained silent, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of her notebook. She knew exactly what Jack was talking about, even if she didn't want to face it. I'm not going to let that happen, Jack continued, his voice firm. But we need to be ready. The social services, the authorities, they won't just let this go. We need to figure out what to do if they come for you again. Lily looked up at him, her expression unreadable. What if they do come for me, Jack? What if they say I'm not allowed to stay here? Jack leaned forward, his eyes softening. I've been working with a lawyer, and we're doing everything we can to make sure you stay safe. But you need to trust me, Lily. You're part of this family now. Nothing will tear you away from us. Not again. Lily swallowed hard, her throat tight. I don't trust the system, Jack. I never will. They failed me before. I know, Jack said, his voice full of empathy. But this time, it's different. We have the law on our side, and I have people fighting for you. I won't let anyone hurt you, and I won't let anyone take you away from Max and me. You're home now, and I'll fight for that home. I'll fight for you. Lily's gaze softened, but there was still a lingering uncertainty in her eyes. I don't know if I can ever truly believe that, she murmured, looking away. I've spent my whole life believing that people who care will always leave. Jack reached out and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. You don't have to believe it all at once. You just need to know that I'm not going anywhere. I won't leave you. Max won't leave you. This is your home now. Lily met his gaze then, her eyes searching his face for any sign of doubt. She didn't find any. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. Okay, she whispered. I'll try to believe you. Jack smiled, relief washing over him. That's all I'm asking, Lily. Just try. The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal battles, paperwork, and tense moments, but through it all, one thing remained clear, Lily was becoming more and more a part of their lives. She continued teaching Max, and Jack watched as the bond between them deepened. There was a lightness to Max now, an energy that hadn't been there before. He was thriving, and so was Lily. But Jack knew that the fight wasn't over. There were still hurdles ahead, and he wasn't naive enough to think they were free from danger just yet. One evening, after a particularly long day, Jack and Lily sat together on the back porch, watching the sun set behind the distant skyline. Max was inside, finishing his homework. Jack finally broke the silence. You know, Lily, Jack said thoughtfully, I used to think success was about making money. About building something that would last forever. But now, I realize it's about something else. It's about the people we choose to fight for. The people we choose to love. Lily didn't respond at first. Instead, she stared at the horizon, the wind tugging at her hair. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I never thought I'd find love like this, she said. I thought I'd always be alone. But you and Max. You've shown me that maybe I don't have to be. Jack smiled softly, his heart full. You're never alone again, Lily. You're part of this family. And we're all in this together. As the evening deepened, Jack knew that no matter what came next, they had already won. They had found something that couldn't be taken from them, a sense of belonging, of love, of a family built from the ashes of brokenness. It was a fragile thing, but it was theirs. And he would protect it with everything he had.